Hi everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and I'm going to be sharing my October wrap up with you, which is going to look a little bit different. So the first thing that I want to say is just a general disclaimer. Within October, I'll be reading is Resistance Readathon, which have been focused on reading and uplifting Palestinian voices. So I'm going to first, in general, talk about those before I go into my normal reading wrap-up for you. I read 2 books, which one was actually a reread. And the first one is Freedom is a Constant Struggle, which I would definitely recommend. This book is not by a Palestinian author. It is by Angela Davis. But Angela shares some really important thoughts about activism and the Palestinian struggle within the book. And this is also a series of kind of essays and interviews as well. It's also read by Angela Davis because I listened to this as an audiobook, which I would highly recommend. There's just something so satisfying about an audiobook and a nonfiction audiobook read by the author. This has a series of essays that talk about Angela's own activism as well. So it was fantastic to know a little bit more about Angela Davis as a person and an activist, but also Angela's thoughts about the Palestinian struggle. Secondly is that I reread Squire. I actually thought that I hadn't read it, but then when I was going to write my review, I realized that I had read it just a while ago, and I never wrote a review for it. So you'll be seeing my review, but it will be something that I reread. What I really love is that this graphic novel is able to talk about misinformation, about ethics, and about the right and wrongs in a really succinct way. Obviously, it's a graphic novel, and so there are a lot to do with, graphic novels don't tend to be really, really dialogue heavy, just because for a graphic novel reader, sometimes that can not really be what they're looking for. I would encourage you next time when you look at a graphic novel to witness the balance between dialogue and description as well. There isn't just as much description and dialogue and internal character narration as you might expect from a longer form piece. So I really enjoyed rereading it in that context. It helped me pick up things because I was reading it for the Reading is Resistance Readathon that I didn't pick up on when I actually read it originally. When I read it originally, I was just reading a lot of graphic novels that were recommended to me. But reading it within this special context made me realize more about the kind of allusions and little bits of the book that are relevant to today's history and not just in this kind of I wouldn't necessarily say that it's fantasy because there's not really magic. And it also, it definitely is a society and a setting that is not Earth per se, it feels very, very close to it. And it feels very much like it could be set near us, which I think is a very conscious choice. So those are what I wanted to highlight first. Now I'm going to chat about what I've been doing, listening to, reading, playing, all of that. And then I'm going to talk about the other books that I read and that were favorites of October. The first thing is that I crocheted, this is kind of delicate, this little mushroom to hang my clay earrings on. You can kind of see that. Because I realized that there wasn't a really good way to store them. And honestly, while I kind of love the mushroom, it's not a great way to store it. The mushroom itself almost needs a post in it to be more secure. And also, it doesn't hold a lot, or as much as I thought. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm going to make a little mushroom forest. That's going to be super, super cute. They don't hold enough for me to make a mushroom forest. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board on how to store these earrings in a way that isn't just them all tangled up. But that's some of the stuff I made. I finished knitting all of my cow sweater, which I can't show it to you because I need to seam it. I'm counting that as having completed it in October because I actually don't seam my pieces. I outsourced that work to a very, very loving partner who seams my stuff for me. So in my eyes, kind of done. The next video that I film for YouTube, you'll see the sweater. I'll make sure to show it, but I don't have it with me now. I also crocheted some wrist cushions for me and my mouse and for my keyboard and I, mostly because I've been playing a lot of video games recently. Kind of reached my end maybe with Stardew Valley, but I've been playing a lot of Cat Cafe Manager and also still playing a lot of Spirit Island, and I've also been getting into Legion TD. So a lot of video games. In terms of what I'm listening to, I've been listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails recently. I really loved the song Capital G when I was growing up as a teen, and so the other day I was kind of like, oh, I should look this song up. And so I've been listening to that album a lot to kind of see if the other songs from the album would be something I'd be interested in. Let's talk about what I've been reading. The general statistics of the month, which I forgot to include in last month, which are that I read 56% books where people of color were the main characters and 36% where queer characters were the main characters. I think that in total I read 45 books, so you can do the reverse math, but I'm just remembering the statistics off of the top of my head, and that's all I can really tell you. Now I want to chat about some of the favorite books that I read in October. I normally go from the ones that I finished the last, or like I finished earlier in October. But today I'm going to switch it up and then go for the ones that I just finished, because those are the ones freshest in my head. The first is Gorgeous Gruesome Faces, which I didn't realize until I finished this book that I really just don't know how to spell gruesome. Awkward. Anyway, Gorgeous Gruesome Faces, which was just so fun in the fact that it was like very violent in the sense that there's a lot of horror thriller aspects to it. It was also a little bit more bloody than I thought it was going to be, but it was really good because I think that the violence of the competition and the way that these aspiring K-pop stars are pitted against each other kind of mirror the horror elements that are going on. It's not necessarily kind of a metaphor for that, or is it? Is it a metaphor for that? I don't know. I can't say because I haven't really thought about it yet. But I can say that I thought that those two elements worked really, really well together. And I read that for a blog tour. The next one is Pride and Prejudice and Pittsburgh, which I gotta say, Natalie Naudus is... how many times am I gonna say this on my channel? Natalie Naudus is an audiobook, auto-buy narrator for me. I was not sure if I was gonna read this book, but then I saw that Natalie did the audiobook for it. And it just happened. It just happened. It just fell into my lap. And it was so good because it also is narrated by someone else. I'm very, very sorry because I cannot remember the name of that audiobook narrator. But it is dual perspective. And so there are two different narrators. Would recommend. Both of them are very, very good. And I love that it feels a little bit like Pride and Prejudice meets Outlander timey-wimey vibes. Like, I did not expect that. I knew nothing going into it. But if you like Outlander, if you like timey-wimey magic kind of things, and you like the idea of a queer YA contemporary / historical, I guess, novel, then you definitely should read this one. The next one is Jackal, which I had no idea what this was going to be going into it. And it was one of those books where I could not stop reading. It has one of those fabulous kind of, there's a hint of unreliability to the narrator, to what's happening. It also is so deeply rooted in the way that justice systems and societies like don't care about missing or dead Black girls. Like, that is one of the core pieces of Jackal. And it also takes this systemic kind of racism and the systemic system of not caring, like the public not caring about all these missing / killed people, and it brings it into a horror thriller atmosphere with a narrator that is working through her own feelings regarding her family and her hometown that really come to a head in the events of Jackal. So this was something I didn't really know what to expect, and then it was also something that I could not stop reading. The next one is With or Without You, which I have a copy of. This is Eric Smith's latest release. I love Eric Smith books. This one was really, really fabulous. I do have to mention, sorry to everyone else, this one has dual perspective, and it took me a really long time to get used to / enjoy / love one of the characters. I think the dual perspective can work either where you love both of them, or one of them you just don't connect with as much, or it takes a long time. And so for me, this took a long time. But I love the ending, and I also love the way that this book examines reality and television, and when those two lines between fiction and reality are blurred, specifically within the context of these warring food trucks and this reality TV show. It was just really fun. I love the title. It makes me have a song in my head every time. And so yeah, that would be my only caveat to my reading experience with or without you. But at the end, I really, really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed that it's about ambition and future and love, and not in like an overly cheesy way. I'm smiling when I say cheesy because one of the things is that they make cheesesteaks because it takes place in Philadelphia. The next one that I want to chat about is Hunt on Dark Waters by Katie Robert. If you've been watching Katie Robert or reading Katie Robert, you will know that this is the beginning of a new kind of spin-off series in the world that is very connected with a lot of other books. And it was so good. Like, I've had a relationship of on and off with the Dark Olympus series, so I really wasn't sure what to expect for Hunt on Dark Waters. And also, there is that vampire book, which I have interesting, or I was hit and miss a little bit with the vampire book as well, but I wasn't sure what to expect with Hunt on Dark Waters, and it was so good. It has this fantastic interplay between like a captain who really ought to be thinking a lot harder about his choices and the organizational ethics he's a part of, and then a heroine who like is trouble from the beginning and everybody knows it. Reckless, clever, cunning, thieving all at once, who's kind of like, but you see that what you're doing isn't great, right? Like, you see that, right? So if you like that dynamic and you also love the idea of pirates, witches / magic, vampires as well, like, it is just so fabulous. I cannot wait for the second book. And it was one of those things where I'd go back to this every night as I was reading it and just have the fun, like the most fun time. I was gonna say funnest, but no, the most fun time while reading it. The next one is Ren Martin Ruins It All. I'll put it over here, which I was also reading for a blog tour. I really, really enjoyed this. Okay, I enjoyed it for a lot of reasons. The first one, it has chickens. The second one is that it has this kind of like You've Got Mail vibe to it, in the way that there are two characters who are communicating, who don't know that they're communicating with each other, and then will they meet? Like, that kind of is what I mean when I say You've Got Mail vibe. But I really loved how we can witness kind of like two really tender stories about characters who open up to each other, not only on this app, but also in real life, and about challenging our expectations and judgments about a person who we might not think that we like at all. The next one is the next two actually I want to talk about are Being Ace and When We Became Ours. These are two anthologies that I read, which are both so close to my heart. When We Become Ours, obviously very close to my heart because it's about adoptees and adoption. This is just fabulous, and what I love about it is it comes down to this core theme about becoming ours. I feel like in adoption, I could go on about this forever, you can often feel like you kind of belong to no one. You can, at least for me, you can feel between these two spaces, these two identities, to have two families, in the sense of, biological and adopted. You can kind of just feel always in this liminal space of in between. And so Becoming Ours was just like so sweet. It was just so sweet. And so I really loved that one. And then Being Ace, was a really fabulous anthology, which I think is really great because we can have this idea specifically in YA literature that it has to always have a romance plotline. And so I really love how Being Ace challenges that, and it talks about YA stories. It offers YA short stories, which are not necessarily all about like the hookup, all about the romance. I think that we need to be opening doors more for asexual and aromantic characters in general within the YA sphere, within the adult fantasy sphere, within all spheres really, because we can have so much of a societal focus on romance and attraction, and also I think specifically that happens more in certain genres. I only have two more. The first one is Better Hate Than Never, which is a sequel to, I think, Two Wrongs Make a Right. It was really good. It was one of those books where like, it is a Taming of the Shrew retelling, pretty loosely. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. I think that the first one, Two Wrongs Make a Right, was a Much Ado About Nothing retelling. Taming of the Shrew, I feel like I've read a ton of retellings. This one was a little bit more subtle than I have read in the past, but I think that's why it worked a lot better. because there's basically childhood rivals, hardcore, which I obviously really loved, who are all trying to figure out this misinformation, these feelings, these miscommunications between the two of them. It is dual perspective, which is a fabulous way for us to re-navigate all of these feelings. And those times where like you'll see someone do something and you will have such a clear idea about what it means, what they're saying. And then when you read that other perspective, you realize you are entirely wrong, that they are doing something and feeling something entirely different. And you go on for years sometimes with those feelings and with those conceptions. So I really loved watching that interchange, that dynamic play out in Better Hate Than Never. And the Taming the Shrew elements, as I said, are very subtle. You can definitely see them if you're trying to pick up on them. But in general, I really love this rivals or childhood enemies, basically, trope. And I also love it. I love it when there's a like, I'm trying so hard to protect you. I'm being mean to you because you're not protecting yourself. I want to protect you kind of vibe to it. Like, let me protect you. Let me wrap you in bubble paper. I really love that vibe. I love it when someone wants to wrap you in bubble paper because they love you. And then the final one is Catfish Rolling, which is a gorgeous copy and also the stenciled edges. But this is the first book in October that took me by storm, and I knew after reading it, it was going to be a fabulous, perfect month of reading because of this book in terms of favorites. It uses liminal pockets of time because there's been an earthquake that has literally had these zones of where time goes really fast or time goes really slow. And it uses these liminal pockets of space and time to talk about so many different issues. The first one of them being a biracial or multiracial identity and feeling literally stuck between different identities, different pieces of your family, different pieces of how the world perceives you. Like, felt this hardcore in Catfish Rolling. It was so fabulous that it uses this metaphor to talk about it. But also, secondly, this is also personal to me at least, it has a lot to do with memory and time and being stuck in either the past, in the future, being stuck, period. And so I also loved how Catfish Rolling uses these pockets of time to talk about memory. And it felt to me very personal in the way that it talks and can be alluded to or applied to dementia. You know, feeling like you're stuck in a place of time where it's moving at a different speed than other people, where you come back to our time, quote unquote, and the world has changed. It's not your world anymore. I don't want to get too emotional, chat about it, but that was really personal to me within reading Catfish Rolling, and it's just another reason why I really loved it. As I said, I read it like the first really book that just made me feel things in October that actually I was reading in September, but I finished in October. And so I kind of wanted to end it on that. Please let me know what some of your favorite reads of October were. I also have been reading a bunch of, going back to kind of end cap it, I also have been reading a bunch of books for the Reading is Resistance readathon. It's just I didn't finish them by the end of October. I think I'm reading currently like 3 at once, or like 3 different formats, basically. I hope you have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and year. And I will see you in my next video, hopefully where I can show you that my cow sweater, which I am so excited to finally put on. Anyway, bye!